the final round of the season after trips to Silverstone, Spa and Brands Hatch. We're here at the Nurburgring where the title will be decided. It will go seemingly one of three ways. Technically, 8 drivers are in contention for the championship, but realistically it's Jordan King, Will Buller and Antonio Giovinazzi, the top 3 in the standings, that are the 3 able to take the title. King has 118 points, Will Buller 115, with Giovinazzi a little further behind on 97 points. And each of those top 3 have picked up 2 wins this season, so it's been a very even season in the standings, and Giovinazzi really a bit of a surprise to be in contention, because he's been a little bit more up and down pace-wise compared to King and Buller, but it's still nevertheless a chance for the Italian to get in. So we are going to have a little bit of a delay whilst some barriers are getting repaired here at the Nurburgring after the Blancpain Endurance free practice that's just been happening out there on the circuit. I remember last year we were here, there was an accident up at the top of the chicane, and I think barrier repairs took about a day, I think it took to get those barriers fixed. But hopefully this shouldn't take too long. You can see someone's gone off under braking coming down into turn 1 there, so that's a bit of an unusual place to have an incident. But nevertheless, we have to make sure the barriers are in full working order before the race can be getting underway. It's 3 half-hour races that will be for your enjoyment this weekend, all streamed live on YouTube, and race 1 and 3 will be straightforward, fastest guy at the front grids, but race 2 will have a reverse grid, which usually makes things a little bit more interesting, and as a result fewer points. So we're not expecting, well, the championship can't be wrapped up in this first race. If crazy things happen, it could be wrapped up in race 2, but realistically we're looking at it being decided tomorrow morning. So there we can see the grid getting ready to receive the cars once the track is all sorted and all ready to go. And alongside me in the commentary box is David Addison. And David, it's going to be an interesting end to this smaller British F3 series, but it survived.
It's been a quirky year, hasn't it, Jack? You're right, because it's been a reduced format. The real threat this year has been the FIA European Championship, and so to keep British Formula 3 going, FOTA, the Teams Association, has worked with SRO to make this smaller calendar. Silverstone, the Nurburgring, Spa, Grand Prix circuits, which are important to the teams and important to drivers, because ultimately they want to be on Grand Prix circuits in the fullness of time. And then Brands Hatch is one of the great classic venues, the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch, and it's fought off the competition from the FIA Championship pretty well. It's given us some good racing, and the stalwart teams such as Carlin and Fortec and Double R still fighting for race wins, still fighting for the championship. And the fact that you've got 2 British drivers going down, as you've been saying, down to the wire this weekend, 3 races, it's going to be up for grabs pretty much until that final race, I think proves that it's been a good competitive season. And you've also got people like, as an example, Nicholas Latifi or Antonio Giovinazzi, who have dovetailed this with their international championship programme. Again, it's all part of driver development. They've learnt about circuits, they've learnt about working with the engineers, and Giovinazzi in particular has looked pretty good. You've talked about those wins that he's had. The downside for people like him and Latifi and 1 or 2 others has been lack of track knowledge. But this is a circuit that he does know, and many of the other drivers know from the FIA Championship, so I think he should be up at the pointy end of the grid. And the other man that I suspect may not necessarily have a win, but he's good for the podium this weekend, is Jan Mardenborough, who's come out of GT racing, as you know, and has got better and better and better in a Formula 3 car. Second at Spa. He's had his dramas, been a bit wild on occasions, but podiums are certainly within him, and in only his 2nd full season of racing and his 1st year in single-seaters against more experienced single-seater people, I think he's pulled up pretty well. There
is Jan Mardenborough. You can see him on the screen now. Just is that Alex Buncombe giving him a little bit of advice, his GT racing counterpart at Nissan. So a little bit of advice from Buncombe before Mardenborough takes to the track. And he certainly has had an event. He was upside down, wasn't he, at Spa earlier on this year. So he's experienced everything as Jan the man. And he will be starting this race from 4th on the grid. So I think he'll be fairly satisfied with that. When they came here with FIA European, it was the shorter circuit, but it's only maybe 2 or 3 corners that they miss out, so I don't think it's going to affect them too much, is it?
All the bits you need big whatnots for are on this configuration, so he was able to cope with things like the last few corners in those European races, as you say. Nicholas Latifi, another driver from the FIA Championship as well, drives for Carlin, very much one of the teams to beat in Formula 3, the Canadian driver who's had a pretty decent season. He's not been a winner, but he's been, as they say, there or thereabouts. Nicholas Latifi will be another one to watch, I think, over the course of the 3 races this weekend.
Yes, the Canadian driver will start 5th on the grid. It is Jordan King who will start on pole position for this race after taking it in qualifying yesterday. Alongside him on the front row will be Will Buller, and 3rd on the grid is Antonio Giovinazzi. So the top 3 in the championship will be the top 3 lining up on the grid. As I say, King can't win the championship today. Even if he beats Buller and Buller retires, there's still plenty of points up for grabs. 25 points for winning race 1 and race 3, with 12 points for winning the second race. So there's still an awful long way to go, and that huge number is why we still have 8 drivers still in contention, theoretically, but it's not going to happen unless something totally outrageous happens. There you can see Will Buller. Well, you can't, he's not in the car. That is his car, run by the Fortec team, and he's obviously popped off to make his final preparations, shall we say, before the racing gets underway. Pit lane will open at 10:55, so 5 minutes or so before the pit lane will open, and then the cars will head around onto the grid. So the recovery guys here at the Nurburgring doing a great job. I mean, these guys are used to repairing barriers, aren't they? Because I think it's the same company that are in charge of all the barriers on the Nordschleife as well, and I think they get quite a few hits.
Yeah, in fairness, it's not just the barrier, it's also the posts behind, and that's often the bigger problem. But you think, oh, the barrier's not too damaged, but if there's nothing securing it, then you're in big trouble. There's Felipe Guimarães, who had a win at Brands Hatch. He runs in the Jesus Saves livery, carried in Formula 1 and indeed junior single-seater categories by Alex Ribeiro, who is often to be found supporting Felipe's racing. I haven't seen him here this weekend. I suspect he may be here. And Felipe Guimarães was a winner at Brands Hatch, so another driver worth keeping an eye to. It's a modest grid, it must be said, but there's certainly quality at the front.
Yeah, absolutely. The likes of Jordan King are being very successful in the European Formula 3 Championship as well. King, in fact, went very well here in Euro F3, so it's certainly a good sign for him, and he will look to improve that and keep that form going. There you can see the little village of Nurburg. Had a steak in that restaurant yesterday. Very good as well, it was. If you ever come to the Nurburgring, then that has my recommendation, and it really is a great place to come to, isn't it? Because, you know, if you come here, you have to go to the Nordschleife.
Absolutely, absolutely. And all the way around, there are echoes of the past. And as we're getting ready for this Formula 3 race, there's actually a qualifying session for a race on the Nordschleife taking place just away to our right. You can occasionally catch a glimpse of cars, Porsches and BMW M3s in profusion heading out onto the Nordschleife. In fact, there you can see them looking down from the last corner. There's the pit lane for the Nordschleife, and a sort of VLN light type race is taking place on the Nordschleife today as well. And so if you're a real die-hard enthusiast, you can almost split your time between the two circuits.
Absolutely, it's a phenomenal track, but we are having the Formula 3 race rather sensibly, I think, on the modern Grand Prix circuit. So just under 5 minutes till the pit lane opens. There you can see the cars lined up. There is Sean Galal, the young Indonesian racer.
He's done pretty well this year. He's come to new circuits. He's come out of the burgeoning Formula Pilota series in China. And although he's not necessarily been a regular front runner, he has certainly got better and better race by race, both in this and, of course, the FIA Championship. And all of that mileage helps development, I know. But he looked a lot better now than he did at the very start of the year. Yeah,
absolutely. The start of the season, his inexperience showed a little bit.
Yeah,
there was quite a few incidents in Euro F3 that he ended up getting involved with. But now he's starting to become a little more mature. Maybe that's down to living in Eastbourne. For now he lives in England, I'm not sure. But he and teammate Giovinazzi are both residents of Eastbourne now. And as you can see, quite a lot of KFC and Pepsi backing behind Sean Galal.
It's a well-fed team, this, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't starve if you race for Double R, clearly.
Well-fed, but poorly fed, perhaps. So yeah, he and Giovinazzi, the Double R crew. And there we go, some good old-fashioned sledgehammering from the Germans. He hasn't quite got the same technique, has he, that second guy?
No.
But they look happy with their work. Yeah, they look very happy with their work at the back, don't they? Hugs all round, job done.
The fun you can have with Armco, you know, it's on a Saturday morning, everyone's a friend. So hopefully that's good now. We can go racing. The cars will be released round onto the grid. They'll, of course, then get their final warming up lap, a chance to get some warmth into those Cooper tyres. There is a double winner this year, Antonio Giovinazzi. It's really track lack of knowledge that's gone against him. And the speed is there, but the more he learns, the better he gets.
Yep, he was very strong at Spa in that third race of the weekend. A very impressive performance, taking his second win of the season after winning the reverse grid race at Silverstone at the opening round. And as you say, he's someone whose pace has really improved throughout the year. Started off with 6th and 7th at Silverstone, finishing up with 3rds and 2nds at Brands Hatch. There's Tatiana Coldron, currently 8th in the championship, the Colombian. And she's the only full season entrant not to get on the podium yet so far this year. So will we see that happen this weekend? She'll certainly be hoping so. Though the way the reverse grid will work will be that after this race on the podium, the winning driver will pick a ball between 8 and 10, and that will see which position is reversed. Spike Goddard making his return to British Formula 3. He's actually the reigning national class champion, taking that title last year in the season finale at Donington Park. He's been racing in the European Series this year. Born in Pennsylvania but grew up in Sydney and then moved to the UK to do Formula Ford back in 2011, where he had some reasonable success. And he is racing this weekend with 3Bond with T-Sport. But it sounds like we're getting engines fired up, which is good to hear.
That team you mentioned is the one that in the FIA Championship Will Buller started the season with and didn't feel that engine was developing in the way that he wanted it to, and therefore when it came to the start of the British Championship, which wasn't until the end of May, he'd already switched teams. He'd gone to Fortec and was a race winner that weekend. That's Chris Vlock, who is the Kiwi for Team Westec, Gavin Will's team, one of the front runners within the national class, the New Zealander who started off in the New Zealand BMW 3 Series Championship, the obvious starting point to go into single-seater racing. And William Barbosa making his BF3 debut this weekend. Yep,
the Brazilian driver will be... This is only, I think, his second race in this particular F3 chassis. He's done a lot of karting in Brazil and has made the move over here and spent a lot of time in Oxford learning English. So I haven't spoken to him. I'm not sure whether he succeeded or not, but maybe we'll try and find him after this race. Maybe we'll talk to him on the podium. Who knows? It could be... Anything could happen.
That breaks the mould a bit, doesn't it? A Brazilian going to Oxford, because normally it's Cambridge. They used to base themselves in Cambridge in the days when Van Diemen was based near Snetterton.
Yeah.
And so all the Brazilians would come over, get a Works Van Diemen Formula Ford 1600 or Ford 2000 drive, and you have this great community in Cambridge. But now, obviously, they're gravitating towards Oxford. Sun Zheng, another man to watch, Jack, because he's been really good, hasn't he, within the national class this year?
And he's our national class champion now, so Sun Zheng cannot be caught at the top of the national class standings. So as a result, he was crowned champion. And it's been a good year for him, there's no doubt about it. He's faced some stiff competition from the likes of intermittently Ed Jones and Cameron Twynham, but nevertheless some good drives from Sun as we still wait for a Chinese driver to really rise to the forefront of single-seater racing. We've had some Ho Pin Tung used to race, but he was kind of half Dutch, I think. He used to race in GT cars, but we're yet to have a Chinese driver really at the forefront of single-seaters, even though that Formula Pelota series you mentioned earlier is starting to create some impressive drivers.
I think Frankie Cheng was the one that people expected to go the furthest, because he did have for a time some McLaren involvement, didn't he? Some input from McLaren, but even that's now going back quite a long time. When he was in Formula Renault, sponsored or supported by McLaren. So the pit lane is open. Hurrah! Cars making their way out on track, and straight away you've got that weaving to get some warmth into the tyres as they go down towards turn 1, which, if you know the Nurburgring, you'll know in any categories where things can kick off on the first lap. You've got that sequence of corners in the Mercedes arena, with the somewhat imposing grandstand looking over the top and trying to do a stoppie there to get a bit of warmth into the tyres, and a brief lock-up from the Westec car coming down the pit lane.
So here's a look at the starting grid then as the cars make their way around to the grid. It's Jordan King on pole, Will Buller alongside him. As I say, the 1, 2, 3 on the grid are the 1, 2, 3 in the championship. Jan Mardenborough will start 4th on the grid. 5th on the grid will be Nicholas Latifi, with Guimaraes alongside him on the 3rd row. Spike Goddard on his return to British F3 and his first race in the international class, actually starting 7th on the grid ahead of the 8th place Tatiana Coldron. Sean Galal and Alfonso Celis, who we haven't mentioned actually, I don't think, and he's making his Formula 3 debut this weekend. This is his first time he's raced in a Formula 3 car. He only turned 17 on Wednesday, and he's been racing in the Formula Renault North European Cup for most of this season. Decided to have a little outing, the man from Mexico City, and he's out in a Fortec car making his debut. and he will start in 10th place, and then it's Shun Zheng in 11th, Chris Vlock 12th, and William Barbosa will start in 13th position as he gets used to these Formula 3 cars.
So who's your money on for a race win? Are Buller and King going to think about points, or are they going to go for a win? What do you think?
Well, Jordan has come out this week saying he thinks it's going to be very clean and fair because no one can afford a non-finish, and I think that's very true. If Buller goes for a move and knocks off his front wing, his championship's over, really, if you lose that amount of points. So we might see a careful race, because the reverse grid race will be quite important because of the slender nature of the grid. You still have a very decent opportunity to get to the front. So, for example, Jordan King finished second in the first race at Spa. That put him back on the grid for race 2, but he still came through to win it. So it is still doable from a reverse grid race. There you can see the track temperature, 17 degrees. It's never particularly warm here at the Nurburgring when we come here in the closing stages of September. And there is Jordan King. He took his time coming out the pits, didn't he? So presumably, hopefully, no problems for Jordan, but he was comfortably the last man to go out of the pits.
Just wonder whether Trevor Carlin's just playing the odd mind game with Richard Dutton and the Fortec guys and just making them get on their toes a bit, keeping an eye on what Jordan King is up to, and if they spend more time looking at the opposition than their own car, then that kind of puts you in the box seat, doesn't it? Will Buller's starts are going to be worth watching. Either for good or for bad reasons, and by that I mean that at Spa in one race he got bogged down and had to do a lot of overtaking, but he did in fairness drive very well. There was another race at Spa where he had to start from the back of the grid because the engine wouldn't fire up. He then got a drive-through penalty because the mechanic was still on the grid at the 1 minute board, and that therefore got him a drive-through. But at Brands Hatch in 2 of the races he jumped the start, one by a bit, one by quite a lot, and again he got drive-through penalties for that as well. If he can get it off the line cleanly, then he will be a man to watch. And the other thing to factor into this, and I'm afraid to say it becomes an incumbent problem almost at every modern Formula 1 circuit these days, is track limits. Lots of people in practice, just Formula 3 as well as the other categories, have been warned about exceeding the track limits, and the Brands Hatch races, I know it's a different circuit, but they were blighted by people getting time penalties for exceeding the track limits. Well, here, where you've got extra run off tarmac, it gives the driver that extra confidence to push a bit more because it's tarmac you're going to go onto, not gravel, not a barrier, not a concrete wall. It would not surprise me, Jack, if we didn't see late in the race drivers getting penalties for the track limits.
Okay, that's something to watch out for, certainly. There is Antonio Giovinazzi for RR Racing. He's going to be third on the grid, and I think also the best thing that's happened this season, as the siren goes to presumably mean something, the best thing about this series this year, because it's been shrunken down and blah blah blah, but up at the front it's still 2 British drivers going for it, with Fortec and Carlin. It's up at the front, at the key pointy end, it's still no different to how it always has been, as Carlin look to take yet another title. Obviously they are reigning champions with Jack Harvey from last year.
And the other nice thing is you've got 2 different engine suppliers, Volkswagen for Carlin and Mercedes-Benz for Fortec. So you're right, 2 British drivers, 2 different teams, stalwart teams of Formula 3 as well, and different power units. You've still got Dallara. It's not a one-make category Formula 3, but as nobody builds a current chassis other than Dallara, it's kind of gravitated that way. So you probably will never again in Formula 3, I would suggest, have that inter-chassis rivalry that you used to in the early days of the category up to the 1990s, the early 90s. But you do have the fight between the engine manufacturers, and that's good, I think, for the category.
So there you saw Jordan King pulling in to take his pole position slot. He's in car number 2, the darker blue of the Carlin cars. There you can see him, and he has raced here on the international circuit. Or the Grand Prix circuit, I suppose I should technically call it. He raced here for the first time in 2011 with FIA Formula 2. He also raced here last year in Formula Renault North European Cup, where he actually finished second to Stoffel Vandoorne, who's part of the McLaren Young Driver Programme. So he's certainly got pace around this circuit as Jordan, and he'll be hoping he can keep his advantage over Will Buller for the entirety of this race. But Buller's a man with a lot of experience. This is his 3rd season now in British F3, his 4th season in Formula 3 overall. Finished 4th behind the likes of Magnussen, Huertas and Jack Harvey, so he's faced some stiff competition as Will Buller. So he has an awful lot of experience. But perhaps isn't used to being right in title fights, Will Buller, because he's been quick, he's been winning races throughout his career, but he's never really been in this head-to-head situation, I'd say.
It'll be interesting to see, as you suggest, therefore, how he copes with the pressure of this. And actually, as far as this race is concerned, he's the man that's got to win it, fundamentally. He needs to go into the next 2 races ahead of Jordan King. In a sense, they only have to race one another. They need to outscore each other, but the battle is purely between them. What happens in the race sort of doesn't matter. They need to just outscore the other.
Yeah. There is Jan Mardenborough, starting in 4th place on the grid. He's another Carlin driver, and he has been outrageously impressive, really, but to move into single-seaters, because part of the Nissan GT Academy program, where you take the racers from their Xboxes to real GT racing, is impressive enough, as we see cars heading out on the Nordschleife. What's that? The VW Cup or something? Oh no, there's all sorts out there.
Mercedes 190, Mark II Golf. Not a Corsa, an early Corsa.
Yeah.
Good luck with your lap chart on that race.
Yeah. I think I'll ignore that one for the time being.
Coward.
Yeah. So it'll be Jordan King starting here on pole position. I'm sure I was in the middle of a sentence a moment ago, but I've forgotten what it was because we were looking at the Nordschleife as the...
It was also to do with Jan Mardenborough.
Yes.
And how he was going well. And I was about to offer you another thought, which is that actually I think Nissan deserve a lot of credit here, because it was Nissan and PlayStation that, as you were saying, took him effectively from couch to cockpit. But because they have recognised the talent of Jan Mardenborough, they've been happy to let him go Formula 3 with Nissan support, but he's driving a car with a Volkswagen engine, even though there was that Nissan 3-bond engine. But the team that runs him, Carlin, has the Volkswagen deal. Darren Cox, who is the Nissan Global Motorsports Supremo, recognises Jan Mardenborough's ability and has not stood in his way. OK, you want to go F3, we want you to go with the top team. That top team has Volkswagen engines. We'll still support you. And indeed, this weekend, Jan Mardenborough is in, as well as he was at Spa, the Blancpain Endurance Series race for Nissan.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why we saw him getting some advice from Alex Buncombe, as everyone make their way off the grid now before the green flag lap around this 3.2-mile Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit will get underway. And then a half-hour race, which is already putting our timetable back a little bit. We do have the second British F3 race coming up later on today as well, which you can see live here on YouTube. Keep an eye out on the British F3 Twitter and other such media to tell you exactly when that'll be, because there will no doubt be some timetable implications after this delay. This race was due to start 15 minutes ago, so we'll see what time we can claw back. But let's focus on this race now, because this could be crucial for the championship. The championship won't be won in this race as the green flag lap gets underway, but it could take a big swing, either in favour of Jordan King or Will Buller, or, let's not rule out the possibility of those two coming together and Antonio Giovinazzi coming into the fray. That's going to be an interesting one to watch as well. Tatiana Coldron in that white and blue machine. She will be starting in 8th place for Double R. 3 Double R cars on the grid. 3 Carlin cars on the grid, 2 Westech. And there is Sean Galal. He will be starting from 9th place on the grid, so I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with that qualifying session, will Sean, there in the yellow number 7 car that just went through. And there's Sun Zheng, our new national class champion for this season, as they make their way down towards turn 7, which is the hairpin at the bottom of the hill, which always seems like it will be a good overtaking opportunity, but you don't take that much speed off because it's not a particularly tight hairpin, as you can see. And then up through the fast, probably flat out in a Formula 3 car, left-right of turns 8 and 9.
It's funny, isn't it, the modern version of the Nurburgring. When it opened in 1984, it was absolutely hated in the shadow of the Nordschleife. How can this possibly call itself the Nurburgring? It's not a proper circuit. And now, all these decades on, compared to rather more modern Tilkedromes, people consider it one of the classic circuits because it's got heritage, it's got character, it's got undulations, and it's kind of grown with time into being a circuit that people actually quite like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good place to come, that's for sure. And our 2 first and second place men getting a bit close to each other, aren't they, as they come up towards the chicane. We're using the slower Grand Prix chicane this weekend, and As a result, that will be an overtaking opportunity position as well, but it's down into turn 1 really that is the best overtaking chance. Biggest stopping zone on the circuit into a very, very tight right-hander. And plenty of space down there as well, crucially. There's Nicholas Latifi. 5th place on the grid for the Canadian. Born in Montreal, but lives in Toronto.
I'm chuckling because you've got this great battle, almost wheel to wheel, up to the grid between Jordan King and Will Buller. If they can keep this up for half an hour, Jack, we're going to be in the right place to watch a great race, I tell you. But there's certainly an element of trying to outcycle the other here. It's the 1-by-1 staggered grid, so of course Jordan King gets that extra lengths advantage. He's on the outside line, the grippier line. That's why Pole is on that outside line, although Will Buller will have the inside line down for turn 1. 3 more races before we know who is going to be the 2013 Cooper Tires British F3 International Series champion. It's between 2 Brits, Jordan King and Will Buller, with a big belch of smoke out of the back.
And that could be big trouble for Will Buller's championship hopes, because look, it's going up in flames. Will Buller, the 2nd place man in the championship, is well, he started to undo his belts. He's getting out, and what drama before the race has even started. The start delayed, unsurprisingly. Now what has happened? Because it looked like we were going to get a proper fire there, didn't it? But it's all calmed down a little bit now. Well, that's very strange.
White smoke and then black smoke. Either way, they'll need another warming up lap, and I would venture to suggest that the technical delegate for the championship, Bob Bassett, would want to look at that car and that engine before he was satisfied it was going to be safe in the race, because if that's got a problem and it's going to leak fluid either now or indeed over the course of the race, that would be a big issue. But we're going to have to, I would have thought, have the teams back onto the grid to fire up the engines to give them another warming up lap. But that car, I would suggest, will be pushed off the grid. If it starts at all, it'll be from the pit lane.
He's trying to get it started now, isn't he? You can see Buller trying to get the car going. But I can't imagine that you have something as spectacular as that, and then the car fires up and everything's fine again. But what a disaster that could... Well, I said the championship couldn't be won, but it could take a big swing.
It can be lost, can't it?
Done. Yeah, here's the replay. So, on the left-hand side, the front row man, Will Buller. A big puff of white smoke, which was odd enough, and then a big puff of black smoke. Wow. I'm no mechanic, but that's not good.
No, I would definitely go along with that. The fact that it's white followed by black, the black smoke bothers me more than the white, really, but I have a horrible feeling that might be the end of the engine. You just got a glimpse of Bob Bassett, the technical guy in the background on the left rear corner of that car. So Jordan King's now looking across thinking, what do we do? And the second formation lap is going to take place, and the race will be down to 27 minutes. Of course, they've got not just the timetable issues that Jack's been mentioning to bear in mind, there's also the fuel in these cars, so they can't do yet more warming up laps and then a 30-minute race. So it'll be another formation lap, warming up lap, and then 27 minutes. So big drama.
Is this an open goal then for Jordan King to take an almost unassailable lead in the British F3 Championship for this season? There's the empty slot where Will Buller was for a moment. There are the Fortec guys now gathered around the car. And they're positioning him as if, you know, they haven't wheeled him back into the garage. From a pit lane start, Buller, with his pace and overtaking abilities that we saw in Spa, could still rescue this to maybe a top 5 if things go well.
I was even going to say podium.
Okay.
But yeah, presupposing, although the car's now pushed backwards, I was going to say presupposing that engine is healthy. Now it's being pushed away, so the doubt forms in my mind.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully the second formation lap will get underway in a few moments' time. It looks like the first formation lap was the closest racing we'll get so far.
Between these two, certainly. But now you see...
It's firing up. It's going, isn't it?
It's gone to the end of the pit lane. Everybody has been released with a rather towy Antonio Giovinazzi look in the yellow Dallara, keen to get on with this. And now somebody has stored... Tatiana Calderon's a bit sluggish to get away. Anyway, we're sort of in business.
Yeah. Well, we've been here before. We've got this far before.
It's quite...
So there we can see Buller chatting to the engineers. And I'm just trying to... Just tried to listen in there, but couldn't quite pick out what the conversation was. And they all seem relatively happy. The engine's gone off again now, but that's probably just for cooling purposes. Okay, so it sounds like a backfire, they said.
One of the Mercedes engineers I saw in the background as well. So clearly you've got the team talking to the engine supplier. You've got the series technical delegate there as well. But the car is being wheeled back. So I think they're going to take it to the garage. It may be something that needs a computer plugged into it. Maybe more sinister than that. But of course now the pressure is on. They've got to get this done so that Will Buller can join the race and not go a lap down. In a sense, it doesn't matter if he's not right on the tail of the field going into the first corner because of the relative lack of cars within the class. As long as he finishes, he will get some points. So there's damage limitation. There may even be a safety car. You never know. That would bring him back into the game. But if he loses a lap, then that's a real problem for him. That he can ill afford to do. But just get him into the race.
Yeah, that's got to be the aim, to try and get Buller, the Northern Irishman, into this, what will now be a 27-minute race.
It'll also be another test of his character, won't it? Because he can see now championship slipping away from him. He knows his rival's on pole position. He knows he's in the pit lane. He knows he's got to get into this race and get some points. It could be very tempting to throw caution to the wind, overdrive and go off and score nothing. This will be a real test if and when Will Buller gets into the race and just how mentally strong he is. Absolutely.
And now what can Antonio Giovinazzi do? Because he is third in the standings at the moment. If he can, well, he will possibly overtake Buller to move into second place, meaning it could be King versus Giovinazzi for the title, but there is still 21 points separating King and Giovinazzi. So if we see King catch fire, then Giovinazzi's going to have an open goal, but with any luck, we should be okay. There you can see the marshal's saying you can't start because it exploded, and Fortec are saying the car's fine.
Now, who gets the casting vote? The championship official there you can see next to the engineer. Bob Bassett will be on the radio to Bernard Cottrell, who is the race director, and ultimately it's down to Bernard to say yay or nay, I would have thought.
Yeah.
But the marshal at the end of the pit lane is the one controlling the lights. So this could be quite interesting. Anyway, back on track, Jack.
We might have a race. We've got a green flag at the back of the field, that's for sure. So pole position is Jordan King on the right-hand side. As the race gets underway, it's a fairly sluggish start from King. Giovinazzi's right up behind him as they come down towards turn one. But I think Jordan's going to hold the lead as they come towards the first corner. Squabbling elsewhere. Late on the brakes is Nicholas Latifi trying to go around the outside. Jan Mardenborough's kept in there. Oh, the two Westec cars. Did they make contact? I'm not sure. But there is Jan Mardenborough trying to go around the outside of Nicholas Latifi. He's pulled it off as they come into the left-hander. So that is a great start, isn't it?
By Guimarães.
Guimarães. Where did he start?
Third row.
Sixth place, yeah. So he's made a cracker of a start. But King it is who leads, Giovinazzi in second, Guimarães then in third, with fourth place Jan Mardenborough. Fifth behind him is Nicholas Latifi, and there is Will Buller, still sitting in the pit lane. The car is not ticking over, hasn't been fired up, so he is, well, very close to going a lap down. 27-minute race then, as they come down to turn 7 for the first time. A few lockups here and there, nothing too dramatic. That's Sean Galal trying to get past Tatiana Coldron, who they qualified in 8th and 9th places. Everyone will have, well, everyone behind Buller will have been promoted a position off the start, of course. As they come through the quick chicane for the first time, a bit of a lockup from second place man, and there is Galal going through them, past Tatiana Coldron.
Good clean pass that, good move on the inside. The one disappointment I'd suggest off the line was Jan Mardenborough, because he had a gap ahead of him where Will Buller wasn't, and he didn't really capitalise on that. Very good start though, as we said, by Guimarães. He's in third place, but Jordan King, as they head towards the chicane for the first time at the end of the lap, is now gapping the rest of them.
Yeah, this is a chance for King to really stamp his authority on the championship as they come through the final corner to complete the first lap. It's a long old lap here. About 1:50s they're going to be doing in race trim, and there is Will Buller. That is surely his race over.
Looks that way,
before it's even started.
Yeah, car being pushed away. So Will Buller going no further as Sean Galal continues this battle that he's enjoying with Tatiana Calderon, who comes up on the outside line, look, wheel to wheel down to turn 1, but Galal stands his ground. Calderon has to slot back in behind, and now Spike Goddard, the Australian, trying to get involved in this as well, but drops back a little bit as they work their way through the Mercedes arena. Got in the dirty air there, car unsettled, has to fall back a bit.
Goddard lost out to both of these two on the opening lap then, because he started in essentially 6th place and is now running in 8th place, with Galal in 6th and Calderon in 7th position. Jordan King, as they came across the line, had a decent advantage of 1.1 seconds over second place man Giovinazzi. So this is going to be I think this could well knock Giovinazzi out of the running if King takes the victory here. We'll have to do the maths on that as we get into the latter stages of the race, but King has just gone purple in Sector 1 as well, so he's continuing to pull away. There is Spike Goddard. He's going to be frustrated. He's got more pace, he will feel, than the two drivers in front of him. So we'll see whether he can work his way up the pack. Up through turns 8 and 9 they come. And there the Westec gang, Chris Vlock in 10th place at the moment. And I think it was William Barbosa who lost a few positions at the start. He was now at the back, and Celis as well. Didn't get a particularly good getaway. Running in 11th place, it's still Shun Zheng, who is the quickest of the national class runners at the moment. 9th overall, first in the national class. They come up towards the chicane at the end of the second lap. There you can see Shun Zheng running quite well, actually. Not too far off the back of Spike Goddard. But there's Jordan King leading the way. Second place, Giovinazzi. Third place, Guimaraes, who isn't under too much pressure at the moment from Jan Mardenborough. The closest battle is still that Spike Goddard, Tatiana Calderon battle that we're seeing on screen now. Spike Goddard, the Australian, in the white car behind Calderon, the Colombian. It's the battle over 7th place because Sean Galal is starting to pull away to the tune of 1 second now over Calderon in second. With 22 minutes to go, we tend to see these Formula 3 races crescendo, I think it's fair to say. The opening lap, everyone sorts themselves out, and then we start to see the true pace of the drivers as they come into now the left-handers at turn 5s and 6, and then out onto this straight that takes them down to the hairpin. Nothing that Spike Goddard can do at the moment, but I think the man who will be most keen to be on the move is Jan Mardenborough, because he'll think, I've got more pace than Guimaraes.
Yeah.
He got an amazing start, fair enough, but I want to be able to get past.
Yeah, Guimaraes has not been a great qualifier this year, but maybe still this is a little bit of inexperience by Mardenborough in terms of standing starts, all those GT starts, rolling starts, but he should be used to it by now. But it just was not a good getaway, was it? He bogged down, as you say, and so now he's trying to gain some ground once again. Will Buller prevented from starting until technical checks, now okay to start. This is from the race director via a text message. So Will Buller has gone, as we've been fearing, lapped down, but I'm led to believe now will be able to join the race. You may say, well, what's the point? The point is, get some points. It's damage limitation. Anything he scores is going to be useful, because who knows, 2 more races to go. Bad luck may go Jordan King's way. The car is being checked, and there you can see they're getting ready now to send Will Buller into the race.
So if he gets to the end of the race with 10 cars in the international class, he will pick up 1 point, which, as we know, can be crucial. That's getting quite close now between Mardenborough and Guimaraes.
There's also another carrot to wave in front of Will Buller, the point for fastest lap. And of course, if they position this right, they can get him out onto the circuit away from anybody else, clear track space, and that 1 extra point for the fastest lap will be another target. And
potentially reverse grid as well, if he can get into a... I think he'd have to rely on retirements for a reverse grid success, but anything can happen. We've still got 20 minutes of this race to go, but it's Jordan King still leading the way. The battle for third place is going to be the one, though. Guimaraes versus Jan Mardenborough. And you can see Spike Goddard's attack on Tatiana Calderon has dropped off a little bit now. And if anything, it's Calderon closer to Galal. And there at the back of the runners at the moment is William Barbosa, the young Brazilian driver. Still getting used to these Formula 3 cars as he makes the step up into car racing for the first time this year. There is Calderon, the Colombian racer. In 7th place then. But it's the battle over third.
I was going to say a little bit closer to Galal. She's taken 3 tenths out in the first sector, so Tatiana Calderon pushing on, but of course then there's this problem. The closer she gets into the dirty air, affects the airflow, goes a little bit slower, so overtaking Sean Galal is not going to be that easy. Jordan King at the moment has done the fastest lap of the race, a 1:51.1. That's the target for Will Buller once he's back out and circulating. And as yet, we haven't had a lap out of him, but he is on track. Yep. He's now no longer shown as being in pit, he's on the circuit.
Yeah, he's gone through the first sector, so he's out there somewhere in the middle part of the circuit. And I think that'll be a real frustration for Fortec, because they'll say, well, the car's fine, but presumably for safety reasons, the scrutineers and the technical delegates have to be happy that it's all safe and sound.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's a shame that, you know, had it been on the installation lap, not the warming up lap, they'd have had a bit more time to do that. But unfortunately, it was just at that point. So high drama, big problems in terms of points, and the gap widening between King and Buller. But Will is a fighter, so too is Jan Mardenborough. Jack's been making the point that he's getting a bit closer to Felipe Guimarães. His last lap was slightly slower, perversely. Certain parts of the circuit, he's a bit braver, isn't he? And he brings down the gap over the course of the lap. Guimarães was the quicker, but now look, he's having to concentrate a little bit more about where Jan Mardenborough is. And then behind them in 5th place is Nicholas Latifi, Mardenborough's Carlin teammate, and he too might benefit. If those two get themselves together, he would then have a chance to just bring down that gap to 4th place.
Nicholas Latifi picked up his first podium of the season at the last race at Brands Hatch, and he curiously seems to run a little stronger in the European Series. I mean, whereas he tends to be battling with the front runners we're seeing here, with the likes of Buller and King in the Euro Series, or sorry, the European Championship. Here, he tends to be not quite on their pace, which is an interesting development. But there is Latifi coming through the left-hander now that brings him out towards the long straight, back towards the pit lane, through the right-hand kink of turn 12, and that's where Jordan King is now, the race leader, with a 2-second advantage over Giovinazzi in 2nd place. So 1st and 2nd are fairly calm, but it's all going to be about that 3rd place battle as that continues to close up in the remainder of the race.
What we need to see is a flying lap from Will Buller, anything in the 151s. In fact, now the 150s is the target, because Jordan King has just done the fastest lap of the race, a 150.9. That also means that he's extended the gap over Giovinazzi by half a second. He now leads by 2.5. He's not hanging around, is he, here, Jordan King? He's building up a big advantage. And then Giovinazzi back to Guimarães is another 2.5 seconds. There is Sean Galisle still fending off Tatiana Calderon, 6th and 7th. We have had a change lower down the order, in fact, because 24, which is Alfonso Celis, has got himself up past Chris Lock into the top 10 now. Try as he might, Sean Galisle cannot shake off Tatiana Calderon, can he? No,
this is a good drive from Calderon as she tries to make her way past. All over 6th position at the moment, which will be a good result for her. Not her best result of the season so far. She picked up a 4th place at Spa in the 1st and 2nd races. She finished in 4th position, so that was good stuff as they come down into turn 7. Oh, a bit of a lock-up from Jan Mardenborough. Nothing too dramatic, because there's a few ways you can take turn 7. You can either hug the inside all the way around or go a little bit deeper into it to get the best run out of the corner and up the hill. But it has put him on the back foot a little bit, and if anything, it's Latifi who is closer to Mardenborough than Mardenborough is to Guimarães at the moment.
Yeah, we've seen this before, haven't we? That certain drivers better at certain parts of the circuit. Latifi, though, as you say, coming into the mix a little bit now. And he's got to find a 2nd against Jan Mardenborough. In the 1st sector of this lap, he was 0.3 quicker. They're in the middle sector at the moment. This is where you've really got to be brave, isn't it? This really fast-flowing part of the circuit up to the last chicane.
Yeah, and then you get on the brakes, and if you're close enough, send one up the inside. My apologies, I said earlier we were using the slower Grand Prix chicane. We're actually using the slightly faster left-right at the top of the circuit, at the end of the hill. And there are the Carlin team watching on as their man continues to lead the race and takes them a step closer to yet another British Formula 3 championship.
Yeah, the chicane is different configuration at this meeting for different championships.
Yeah.
Lamborghini's use one format, Blancpain another, Formula 3 go that same route as well. So, yeah, you've got to be on your toes for that. And it's something the marshals need to address as well, make sure they've got the configuration right. But on this slightly softer version, Jordan King, very much the man to beat. He's now 3 seconds ahead. He's just driving off into the distance, isn't he? He's not putting a wheel wrong. And I think it's fair to say, Jack, you've seen more of him in Formula 2 than I have. But this is his best season of racing. He's just driven far better. Yes, it's down to experience in part, but he just now looks like a different driver. Very good indeed. Yeah, absolutely. He was impressive in his first race in Formula 2 at Spa. He made a fantastic start and I think was running 2nd for a while in his first international single-seater race. But you're right, since then he's really developed this year, I think, and is now running right at the front of the European F3 Championship, which is arguably the most condensed selection of talent anywhere in the world. It's outrageously tight at the front of Euro F3, and Jordan King is getting there now, which is great to see. He finished runner-up last year in Formula Renault North European Cup, I think it was, and also won the MRF 1600 Championship in India. That's his
That's his one championship that he has to date, as they come through the right-hander now. But yeah, it's been a good performance from King, and I think he's starting to single himself out as one of the best young British talents out there.
Will Buller, in the meantime, is of course doing decent lap times now, but he needs a slightly lighter fuel load, I think, before he can think about the fastest lap of the race. He's about 4/10 away from Jordan King's fastest lap of the race. Remember, there's a point at stake for that, so it matters. The lead gap is now 3.8 seconds. Can't get the champagne open just yet for Jordan King, but it's certainly on ice for him, isn't it? Giovinazzi is second, Guimaraes runs third, a second ahead of Mardenborough, who thinks about making a move on the inside down to turn one. I think that was more in hope than in anticipation, but of course what he'd like to do is rattle a mistake out of Guimaraes and nip through, picking up the pieces.
You can see Guimaraes he is driving looking in his mirrors at the moment, there's no doubt about it, whereas some drivers, if they're coming under pressure, they'll just stick to their racing line. Guimaraes is almost going half defensive, perhaps to let Mardenborough know that he knows he's there. Like here, for example, you would be covering right onto that the outside line coming into turn 5, but Guimaraes is certainly looking in his mirrors an awful lot of the time, and Mardenborough will know that, and as a result try and force him into making a mistake. We'll probably see Mardenborough feint towards the inside coming into the hairpin as well. He's not quite close enough this time, but the problem he has, as well as locking up that right front again, is if you take the inside line into the corner, you're going to be slower through it, and it was as a result of that show towards the inside into turn 1 that he's dropped back a few car lengths now, and again brought Nicholas Latifi back into play. But I don't think Latifi fundamentally has the pace to challenge these two.
I agree with that. He's dependent on those two delaying one another. Meantime, Will Buller, quicker than anybody in the first sector of the lap. So are we now starting to see the start of a dummy qualifying run, if you like, from Will Buller to try to take that fastest lap point? He's down in 13th place overall. You get points in class, but the point for the fastest lap is what he really wants out of all of this. Way up onto the curb goes Jan Mardenborough. He's certainly trying. He was quicker than Guimaraes a lap ago. Is he near enough to think about making a move? What he wants is a good run down the pit straight, and maybe he'll be able to challenge on the inside. He had a look last time to see whether it was possible or not. Is he going to be able to make a move this time? Guimaraes thinks about the need to defend, but actually Mardenborough not close enough. As he brakes a bit later and closes up under braking, so Will Buller has just done the best of anybody in the middle sector. So on track, you're looking at the fight for third place, but Will Buller, who is about to come across the timing line, gets caught up in traffic, but he has done the fastest lap of the race. That's one mission accomplished, unless anybody goes quicker. He has just done the fastest lap and he gets a point for it. And cars he's overtaking now are not going to help him get a fastest lap, and they're not going to help him in the race classification. That's the real frustration for him. Now he's caught up to slower cars, but he's still 3 laps down.
Yeah, absolutely. There you can see Will Buller, 13th place, 10th overall, so at the moment he'll pick up 2 points from this race, whereas Jordan King will pick up 25, which is, needless to say, not good news for his championship challenge, but anything can still happen. The reverse grid race is always a bit of an oddity. As they come up this third place battle to the left-handers at 8 and 9 once more. And then it's starting to close in behind as well, isn't it? With Galal, Calderon and Goddard still stuck together in their trio. Goddard coming back into the fight a little bit after dropping back earlier on, but as is always the case in single-seaters, fairly difficult to get past. 10.5 minutes to go here at the Nurburgring in the 10th race of the 2013 British Formula 3 season. And if things stay like this, then King will go up to 143 points. Buller picking up 2 points. We'll see him on 117, only 2 points ahead of Giovinazzi. So it does really, really open the doors for Jordan King to be the 2013 British F3 champion. Still got to walk through the doors, though, to use that bizarre metaphor that I've ended up with, and I'm not sure how. Across the line they come, and this is the continuing battle then over 6th, 7th and 8th place. Looking pretty close. Spike Goddard in the white car at the back of that pack is making his first British F3 race of the season. He is the reigning national class champion, but he lost quite a bit of ground, didn't he, coming through that first corner, so that's obviously somewhere where Goddard is a little bit weaker. Tatiana Calderon running well, trying to get past Sean Galal in the battle over 6th place, as I say. You would never guess that it's Spike at the wheel of that car, would you, with that side pod?
As he does have a real Christian name, which is Richard, but everybody knows him as Spike, as you say. And he's gotten a lot better, I think, in Formula 3. I don't think he really got on with Formula Ford when he first came to the UK, but he goes better in these cars. Jan Mardenborough, another lock-up. Now, there's no denying the fact that Jan Mardenborough is working this car very, very hard. I just wonder whether, A, he's overdriving a bit, and that's starting to cost him time, and also it's starting to affect his tyre life a little bit, because he's certainly being more aggressive than others.
These guys were half a second quicker than Antonio Giovinazzi on that last lap. Giovinazzi did a 52.1. Guimaraes, Mardenborough and Latifi all did 51.6s. So whether it was a specific moment for Giovinazzi on that last lap, we'll have to wait and see if that trend continues. We're watching our national class leader, Sun Zheng, on the screens for CF Racing, the Welsh-based squad that Howell Lloyd raced for a long time and is now in a more managerial role in that team, I believe. And it'll be interesting to see what Zheng does next year, actually. It'll be good to see him compete in either the international class here in British F3 or move on. But really, the national class is a stepping stone to the international class of British F3. That's the theory.
That's right. In breaking news, Jordan King has now done the fastest lap of the race.
Yes.
So he gets another point. Will Buller loses a point. So it's now 144 plays 116. That's 27 points, therefore, between the two of them. But there is time enough left for Will Buller to get the fastest lap. Of course, the problem is, as I say, he's now in traffic, whereas Jordan King is out on his own.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to worry about anybody in the way.
No, there is Will Buller. He's just made his way past Sellis and, well, not still in 13th position because he's just unlapping himself from the lower orders. Is there anything to be said? Is there any way Buller could come into the pits, make a pit stop, put on some fresh tyres just to get the fastest lap, or is it not really worth it? We'll wait and see. There you can see confirmation Jordan King has gone quicker, 1 minute 50.674. Meanwhile, Giovinazzi found his pace again on that last lap, so he's still not too far ahead of Guimaraes, only a couple of seconds, but I think he's got that second place fairly comfortable at the moment as we see King continue out on the circuit.
I'm pondering your question about tyres, and I'd be tempted to leave him out on these because you want fresh tyres, or as fresh as you can, for the other two races. Danger is you gamble on using one of those sets of tyres now and your driver makes a mistake and stuffs up and you go into another race with damaged tyres. So try and, I mean, these tyres are pretty good at lasting the distance, so yeah. I'd be tempted to keep him on it and make sure you've got fresh rubber for races 2 and 3. You saw Trevor Carlin a moment ago looking at the timing screens. He knows that Jordan King not only is the fastest man on the circuit, but has just gone even quicker. He's done a 150.674, so the fastest lap of the race, Jordan King's yet again, and by an even better lap time. And he now leads by nearly 8 seconds from Antonio Giovinazzi. Guimaraes versus Mardenborough is only half a second, and look at Latifi coming back at them. This 3rd, 4th and 5th fight has been threatening to develop race long, and it's kind of there.
Yeah, absolutely, but Mardenborough doesn't seem particularly strong on through the first corner, because that's where Guimaraes is able to pull away. Mardenborough really throws it through that chicane at the top of the hill. Oh, Mardenborough, he's gone wide, coming through turn 2. Just about gets it all together again, so that's not going to give Latifi an opportunity. Did they close in again on Giovinazzi? They did. Another half a second or so they took out of Giovinazzi on that last lap. Giovinazzi did a 52.0, whereas Latifi did a 51.5. The others did 51.6s and 7s. So there's a chance Giovinazzi might get swallowed into this fight, but there's only 5.5 minutes to go, so you'd think he should be able to hold on to that second place. But this 3rd place scrap is the one to watch. Everyone after a podium.
The lifeline for Giovinazzi is the battle between Guimaraes and Mardenborough, because every time Mardenborough gets a little bit closer, Guimaraes has to defend. His lap times go up. When he can attack, he's a little bit quicker than Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi's lap times are fading away, but Guimaraes has got this traffic behind him, and that's the problem. He can't dedicate purely on attacking and driving his own lines.
Yep, absolutely.
And Latifi, they're almost in the gravel.
Yeah, a little kicking up a bit of dust. The Canadian. Jordan King, though, continuing to lead this race with less than 5 minutes to go. Will Buller in 13th place, looking like he's only going to pick up 1 point from this race because King is still out there setting fastest laps. There's Jan Mardenborough. Not as close this time around as he was previously to Guimaraes. Across the line they come, the three of them still pretty much glued together. Did they close in again on Giovinazzi? Not notably on that lap. a tenth of a second. But we'll see if Mardenborough can keep the pace up a little bit more through this first corner. And look, the gap really extends because Mardenborough appears to go a little bit wider on the exit of the first turn.
What's interesting about this as well, of course, is you've got two different teams, two different engines in terms of Guimarães and Mardenborough. So you start to think, well, are Carlin cars set up to work better at different points of the circuit? Are we looking at certain sectors where the Mercedes is better in terms of power delivery than the Volkswagen engine? It's all part of the fascination. This is why open chassis, open engine, open team categories like this work for my money.
Yeah, absolutely. As they come out of the right-hander at turn 6, down the hill towards turn 7. The trend tends to be spec series in the modern age, but you're certainly right about Formula 3. It's very interesting having the open specification, which it must be. There aren't many single-seater series where that's the case, is it? The majority are spec.
Not for career racing drivers, yes. I mean, you can go down to club racing and find monoposto, but you're right, in terms of a career path category, very, very rare indeed. So, although it's become, in terms of chassis, as we said before the race began, Dallara dominated. The days of Raul Reynard, for example, long gone, but Dallara came into the championship back in 1993. And Warren Hughes and Stephen Arnold were the people that locked out the front row of the grid at Thruxton that year. By mid-season, everybody had a Dallara chassis. And although we've had occasional victories from other things, like the Lola when Danny Watts won at Castle Combe, it's been dominated by Dallara ever since. And as Jordan King crosses the line, he's put 13 laps in the book. He leads by 9.8 seconds. Equal chassis, leads by 9.8 seconds.
And I was just about to see if Jan Mardenborough was about to make a move coming into the first corner, but we switch back because Sean Galal is now under intense pressure from Tatiana Coldron. That is a phenomenal lead, actually. 9.8 seconds.
Right.
Yeah, that's just kind of registered with me as they come down to the first corner. Coldron not close enough. Oh, tries to outbrake Galal around the outside. That's going to be a great move if she can pull it off. Brilliant stuff.
Excellent.
Tatiana Coldron moves up into 6th place. Galal was too busy defending. A little, whether he was early on the brakes or Coldron was brilliantly late on the brakes. It's not over yet, though. Galal trying to fight back. He'll have a better exit, but there's not really an overtaking opportunity coming into the left-hander at 5. So if he can stay nice and close, he might get an opportunity coming down into the hairpin of 7. Will Buller is about to come and unlap himself from these two as well. But I think Calderon's got the job done now. She's pulled out a couple of car lengths, and that 6th place is hers with a great move.
Excellent bit of driving. Round the outside, you've got to be brave and not to make a mistake and run too wide. Takes good effort, good car control. Fantastic move, that. And there's not much that Sean Galal can now do because he's lost track position. He's also dropped too far back, so he's not close enough to make an opportunistic dive up the inside. I think that's job done for Tatiana Calderon. She's back into 6th place. That could be quite useful on the reverse grid as well. A bit nearer the front.
Yep, that's absolutely true. She, as I say, had a couple of 4th places back at Spa. But 6th tends to be her kind of best running order. A 5th place in the opening race of the season at Silverstone as well. So Jordan King has just gone to start his final lap as we watch this battle for 6th position that I think has pretty much been resolved. There is Jan Mardenborough still in the battle for 3rd place with Guimarães. But nothing doing just yet, and potentially that was his last chance coming down into the first corner, because that's the last time they're going to take turn 1.
And on to the last lap, and Will Buller does not have the point for the fastest lap, but his lap times are not now suggesting, as he's in traffic once again, that he's going to be able to improve. So what was a pretty bleak race has got bleaker for him, hasn't it now? Because that point, the 1 point for the fastest lap that he was clutching at, has faded away as well and gone the way of his main rival, Jordan King. So huge frustration for Will Buller. It's going to be interesting in advance of race 2 to find out exactly what it was on the grid, because it was one of the more unusual sights. And somebody's gone way off the road there at the last chicane.
Yeah, I think that's Chris Vlock who's taken the trip. The Kiwi having a little bit of an excursion towards the Nordschleife. Keeps it on the Grand Prix circuit, though. Another lock-up from Jan Mardenborough. There you can see Chris Vlock. He's in 11th place, which is 2nd in the national class, as Shun Zheng continues to lead as we look towards the final corner, because relatively soon Jordan King will be appearing there to receive the checkered flag and take a huge step in towards securing, let's make that clear, the British F3 Championship title for 2013. Okay, so his main rival blew up on the grid, but he still had to win this race, and he certainly has won it. He's going to have over 10 seconds advantage as the checkered flag falls. Jordan King wins race 1 at the Nurburgring, but also, crucially, takes a huge points advantage at the top of the British F3 Championship, going into the final 2 races of the season. Second place across the line is Giovinazzi. Look at that, only just ahead of Guimaraes, less than a second as they came across the line. So Giovinazzi really taking it steady. Third place for Guimaraes, then he completes the podium. Mardenborough 4th, Latifi 5th. There across the line, 6th place for Tatiana Calderon. Great move to take that 6th position. Will Buller finishes in 13th, picks up 1 point. Here comes Sun Zheng. He's going to win the national class for the 5th time this season as the national class champion. Great performance from him as he takes the checkered flag. And it's been a good race. Jordan King taking the title lead anyway. Oh, Sun Zheng celebrating dramatically. But yeah, Jordan King taking a real title advantage now over Will Buller. And we may even see without that 1 point, does that mean, no, it means Giovinazzi is just 1 point behind Will Buller in the battle for 2nd place now. So it's not job done for Jordan King, but it's a big step closer.
Perfect drive. Not a wheel did he put wrong in that race. I know he was helped in part by the dramas for Will Buller. That, I think, was Chris Vlot, wasn't it, getting it wrong? The race director helpfully tells the teams where their cars have gone off, and the message about Chris Vlot was he went off at turns 13 and 14. You can tell it's big when it involves 2 corners.
Absolutely. So the mechanics will now make their way up towards the podium for the presentation of Jordan King winning his 3rd race of the season, and he becomes the first man to win for the 3rd time. Everyone else who's won 2 have yet to make it to the 3, but Jordan King has now. And a fantastic British F3 race. Here's a look at the results, David.
Jordan King, the race winner, by 10.3 seconds from Antonio Giovinazzi. Felipe Guimaraes comes home 3rd ahead of Jan Mardenborough. Nicholas Latifi bags 5th ahead of Tatiana Calderon with that cracking move round the outside of Sean Galal. Spike Goddard 8th ahead of newcomer Alfonso Celis. Then it's Sun Zheng, despite his slightly wayward way of taking the checkered flag. 11th goes the way of Chris Vlot, despite the rallycross. 12th to William Barbosa. 13th, Will Buller. So that is the story of the race result. In terms of the championship, Will Buller now very much on the back foot, because that result means that he now takes just a point for 10th in class out of that race. And so he's going to have to really fight in race 2. But there's just something, isn't there, about the way that Carlin metronomically takes results, takes points, doesn't often have mechanical dramas. Very rarely do you have mechanical failures from the Carlin team. And so yet again, it's a Carlin driver winning a race, and Jordan King takes another step towards becoming this year's British F3 International Series champion. 2 more races still to come for the Formula 3 teams, though, here at the Nurburgring this weekend. 1 more today, and then we move to a very early morning race to decide the championship tomorrow. So the drivers make their way to the podium. 2 more races, as I say, to come in the championship this year. The story will continue at the Nürburgring this afternoon, but Jordan King is the man very much to beat, as he has this 27-point advantage with 2 more races still to run.